Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. I really am so excited that you are here with me today. In this episode, we're going to be talking about it's not failing, it's learning. This episode is kind of a message to me right now, or like to me maybe a few weeks ago. And so basically it's something that's really, I guess, feels personal. It's not like this is how to run your business, here's your 5 steps kind of thing. This is really me just chatting with you as a friend. And so I really hope you find it valuable. But yeah. So I thought maybe I'd go ahead and start with maybe a little bit of a background as to why I felt compelled to record this episode. Because spoiler, well, I guess this isn't a spoiler, but this wasn't on my agenda. I actually haven't even looked at the topics I was going to discuss this month. But either last night or today, I can't remember exactly when it was, I had this idea and I felt like moving forward with it. So basically, if you follow me on Instagram, especially if you follow my Snickerdoodle Knits account, you know that I haven't been feeling exactly like myself. Haven't really had my normal energy, and that's mostly it for the last several months. And so I've just been mentally and emotionally drained, and it really hasn't been fun. I haven't been feeling like doing a whole lot. It was kind of ironic. At the beginning of August, I recorded an episode that came out at the end of August that was about how to efficiently create your content. And then partway through August, I realized this content is draining me, especially Instagram is draining me. This is not enjoyable. I'm dreading every time I have to go on and starting to dread interacting with people. And this is the part that I love about Instagram. So I was getting so frustrated. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry about creating Instagram content. I even have been like feeling so meh about it all that I wasn't super excited to record a podcast for a while. So today, I think I've revealed a couple of different times that I don't always get my podcast episodes recorded on time. And so I backdate them on the podcast platform. I maybe should feel guilty about that because that's not exactly honest, is it? But I guess it is what it is for now. I don't really feel guilty about it because that is what works for me, and that's what allows me to go ahead and get my average of 1 podcast a week out, talk about the things I want to talk about without recording from a bad energy. Anyway, but when I say that I am excited to talk to you today, I really truly am excited because I am getting out of this rut. I am moving forward. I have some more energy, some more clarity, all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I guess I just decided to give that as a little bit of a background to this whole conversation of it's not feeling, it's learning, because in the middle of being completely exhausted and drained from different things that I was working on, I realized I started Snickerdoodle Knits 4 years ago. Snickerdoodle Nuts Etsy shop started, opened up officially, publicly on Instagram and on Etsy October 1st of 2018. Today is September 13th. That's like only a couple weeks away. I was already started all of the making the hats and the scarves and whatever I was making. I had already started trying to learn all about business stuff. I've been watching webinars and taking free classes and all this different stuff. I've been doing this for 4 years, and that's crazy. And so this really negative part of me was like, I mean, sometimes it still is. I'm trying to change how I'm looking at that, and that's part of what this conversation is about today. But I see I've been doing this for 4 years, and this negative part is like, you haven't accomplished anything. Why are you here? Like, why aren't you farther? Why aren't you like a 7-figure business already? Why aren't you, why doesn't the whole knitting community know about you? Why, all these things that just make you feel like a failure, make me feel like a failure. and and so yeah, I think it was just last night that I had this idea that came to mind. That's, it's not feeling, it's learning. And I kind of have to cringe a little bit at the fact that I'm recording an episode all about this topic, because this is something that I've never really loved when people said, it's like, no, you're just trying to put a band-aid on it. You're just like trying to make yourself feel better that you failed. And, like, put on some big girl pants and realize that it didn't work. And I'm realizing that mentality maybe wasn't serving me. It definitely wasn't serving me. So I guess really this episode is for, I don't know how far we're already, how many ever minutes in this episode, but this episode is really for my fellow perfectionists, my fellow folks who have fear of failure, and my fellow folks who really put too much, give too much authority and power to other people, worry too much about what other people think. It's something that I have been working on for 4 years, is really getting better at these things. And I have improved a lot. Like, it is kind of impressive how much a person can change in just 4 years, how much a person can change in just 2 years. But it doesn't mean I've completely conquered it, obviously. And I don't know if that's something we ever will conquer. There's definitely, I was just thinking earlier today of a circle. Like, basically I was thinking I should create this kind of diagram thing to share on my website and kind of become a signature part of my brand. A circle that really shows the different cycle we go through over and over and over and over and over again. We learn and we grow and we improve, and we know how to move through the cycle with more ease and more intentionally and with more authenticity. But a lot of the things we come across them again and again and again and again. I recently saw a graphic, I'm pretty sure it was probably on Instagram, because, why would I consume content anywhere else? And it's the most reliable source of information. So anyway, this graphic, it was showing, okay, it just showed a circle. Just looked like a circle, and it's like, you feel like you're just going in circles, but really, and then it showed like the side profile. It's like, really, this is what you're doing. And it's a spiral. So from the top view, it looks like a circle, but from the side, you realize that there's improvement going up. And so you're really, sure, like, you're going in circles, but you're going in circles and going up, and you're improving, and there's growth there. So anyway, off on my tangent already. How many tangents are you counting? Anyway, so yeah, it's basically what I was saying is that so many of these things like perfectionism, things like fear of failure, things like imposter syndrome. These are all things that, they come back around. They do. Um, we're never going to be perfect. And so anyway, really this is about learning how to deal with those parts that we don't like. Parts that we tend to feel shame about, that we get mad about, frustrated about, irritated about, the things that feel like failure. Because as cliche as it sounds, as cliche as it is, um, experiences, yeah, sure. Sometimes we're doing well, we're achieving things, we're accomplishing things, and sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but we are. And so that's where this it's not feeling, it's learning concept is coming from. Because when we fail, we actually learn a lot about ourselves, about our business, about the world, about our audience, about all of these different kinds of things. And so maybe in some ways, it's our quote unquote failures that allow us to grow the most. Perhaps it's our quote unquote failures that allow us to grow the most. I feel like I need to write that down. But anyway, um, because there is so much learning that can happen in the failing. And also, failing is in air quotes here. So I guess I'm trying to decide basically where to start. um, I do want to say, like I recognize that I'm not the best person at learning from my mistakes. Not always. I have, on my calendar every month and every quarter and every year, I'm supposed to do this whole review session where I look at what all I accomplished and what all I didn't accomplish and where I got and where I didn't get and how I felt, and then really analyze it and figure out the lessons from it and how to move forward. And so, parts of my going around in circles, yes, it's because of that. But I have still learned a ton from my business in general, from this whole entrepreneurship journey over the last 4 years. And a lot of it is from the things that didn't go well. Yeah, we learned from things that went well too. But anyway, so what I'm sharing today is really how we can re I don't know, how you can change your perspective to see failure as not failure, but as learning. I have several different bullet points here. We'll see how this all meshes together. I don't like to follow a certain kind of outline for my podcast episodes. When I do, sometimes I do that for like the step-by-step kind of things, and then it feels like I'm just reading it, and that's not, this podcast is not about that. This podcast is about having discussions that are real and authentic and, meaningful with you. And that's not to say that those don't have a place, of course. Of course, obviously, I feel like they are important because I include them. But yes, so earlier today I was working on a design, and it's new. A lot of new things that I'm trying to design in it. And that's not a new concept for me. Most of my designs, I have incorporated something new in it, or maybe 5 new things in it. And something that I enjoy. But I realized as I was designing this, and I didn't really know what I was doing, I had a lot of grace for myself. I didn't have the expectation that it would be perfect. I have the expectation I'm going to make some swatches, I'm going to do some math, I'm going to try it. Oh, this sample isn't working out well. That's not that surprising. I'll just rip it back and restart and do something different. And I realized that, in that process, I have a lot of curiosity about learning what will work. I don't beat myself up over the things that I didn't know, the things that weren't going to work, because in my head, that's what made sense. How was I supposed to know differently? I did a bunch of research, but I strongly believe that there are there's a huge percentage of things that we have to learn from experience. There's things that we will only learn as we work through it, as we actually implement. And and for me, usually that's an easier way to learn. I don't know, it's really interesting. I don't love just reading articles and books and doing research that way. I much prefer the hands-on research. I'm going to remember it a lot better that way. And I can visualize, okay, this is why, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I just found it really interesting thinking about the fact that I'm, you know, by my typical definition, that's a failure. I didn't get it right the first time. But somehow I had a lot more grace and a lot more curiosity around it. And maybe that's what we need more of. Maybe that's what I need more of in my business in general. Just to have this grace to understand we can't know it all to start with. It's not going to be perfect to start with. Have curiosity around it and have some grace around it. This idea of really trying things and just testing and treating them like a trial rather than expecting it to be a perfect thing that we're creating and putting out there and that's going to be mega successful right from the beginning. So I guess that's maybe lesson number one, tip number one in this viewing things as learning rather than failing is to just view them more as an experiment, to just be super curious about what the result is going to be if we try something. And if it doesn't work, you can just try something else. It's not that big of a deal. So then I guess story number two, one of the big things that was a huge learning lesson for me and that actually felt like a learning lesson even for the most part during the experience was let's see, what year? 2020 maybe? 2 years ago? Yeah. So it was about this time 2 years ago, I started a Patreon. And then a few months later, that moved into a community. And I realized that is not my style. That is not what I wanted to be doing. And it's not the Patreon or the community that was against what I really enjoy. It was what I was trying to create and provide with those services. And so through creating the Patreon, and the idea there is that you charge a monthly fee for whatever you're creating and providing through the Patreon. So it's a membership. It is a membership. Often it is kind of a lower price membership, but of course that completely depends on how you set it up. So I had decided I was going to have all this exclusive content. It's going to be creating all of these posts and sharing lots of behind the scenes stuff. And then for certain tiers, basically teaching people how to design and giving them insider look at my designs and all this different stuff. So I didn't have anybody join the design tiers. And then I realized I'm putting a lot of time into creating all of this extra content for my Patreon members. And I was creating surveys for a lot of different parts of my business to really figure out what's working, what's not working. I sent out a survey for my Patreon members to really understand why they're there, what they're loving, and just get a feel for what was actually working. And what I discovered from that survey is that the members inside of my Patreon community, they weren't interested in the content I was creating. I was putting all these hours each week into creating exclusive content, doing all of this extra stuff that they weren't even interested in, which was interesting to me because before I started my Patreon, I had done quote unquote market research. I asked my audience, are you interested in seeing this? Are you interested in hearing about this? Are you interested in XYZ, ABC, all of the things? And basically my Patreon, I gave them what they said in the surveys they would be interested in. I do not know overlap, of course. The people that answered that, the people that actually paid and were in the Patreon, I don't know what those overlap layers were. But But anyway, what I discovered was that in my Patreon, people weren't there for the content, they were there to support me. So actually what I learned, so I was putting a lot of time and energy and pressure on myself to create all of this extra content that nobody was really consuming, that nobody really cared about. And so it was a waste of time, quite literally. And so that taught me a lesson there. uh so another tip, I guess, if you're taking notes or even if you're not, surveys are so helpful to use as learning tools. Whether you feel like you're succeeding or you're failing, surveying your audience, your customers, depending on exactly what you want to know, um, provides so much information. You can ask them why they like to follow you or why they like to buy from you. You can ask them what kind of content they're enjoying. You can ask them what they want to see more of. You can ask them what their biggest struggle is. You can ask them what their biggest desire is. You can ask them all of these different things that you need to know for your business because you're making all these decisions in your business to help them. And so then your surveys give you a lot of information to learn and to improve. Then the other thing I learned in my Patreon, or in the process of trying to create the Patreon account, the Patreon community membership, whatever we want to call it, was that I wasn't super clear on what made me stand out from other people. I had an idea of what I design and all that kind of stuff, but when it came to really selling me, selling what I create as a Patreon membership, I realized I didn't actually know how to set myself apart, how to make it interesting and enticing to actually join my Patreon community. And I quickly learned that I also, because I wasn't super clear on that, I wasn't super clear on what my Patreon was going to provide, I wasn't super clear on how to market it. So that's a big problem when you're trying to market things to make money. And to provide value for your customers, you have to kind of know those things. Anyway, so those were a lot of learning lessons from my quote unquote failed Patreon. It only lasted a few months, and I mean technically it's still there, but I don't provide any content. So if you're interested in supporting me at like $5 a month or something like that, feel free to support me on Patreon. Stick your little knits. But that's not actually what this podcast is about. So, as I mentioned, from there, I went into creating what I call the Snickerdoodle Knits community. This was truly a membership in that, or what I really think of as a membership. I was providing quote unquote valuable content. I was producing mini courses, I was teaching lessons, I was helping them with any knitting problems, I was all of these different things. Basically, I was a knitting teacher, selling my services and giving discounts and stuff with that as a membership, which sounds like a great idea. I had a whole great, wonderful plan on all of the content I was going to create in there and share in there, and then how I was going to create other larger courses that then fed into it. And I still believe it could be very successful. But I realized what I learned is I did not enjoy that. That is not the kind of stuff I want to be doing. I do not love teaching knitting to people. Part of me was like, but you're a knitwear designer, but you enjoy knitting. You should enjoy teaching knitting. Well, I don't. I'm a good teacher. I have some innate abilities where it seems to come fairly naturally for me to mentor folks and teach them and guide them. And it's not that I wasn't good at it. It's just that I didn't enjoy it. I didn't love teaching knitting. And so that was a huge pivotal part of my business, um, which I guess could also go back to the very beginning. When I started my Etsy shop, I was selling the products. I was selling the hats and the mittens and the scarves and the cowls and on Etsy and at craft fairs. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I was selling the actual products, and I realized not too far into that that it was really hard on my hands, it was really hard on my shoulders. It I was getting really bored making similar kinds of stuff over and over again. And while I loved the business aspect of it, I didn't really love what I was doing. So that was a learning lesson too. Um, and I, so that's when I started to consider, do I want to be a designer? Do I want to dye yarn? What do I want to do? And the path wasn't clear for a while. It took several months. So I started my Etsy shop October 1st. I went through that whole winter season selling at craft fairs and things. It was probably about November, December time, so like a month or two into creating products for Etsy that I'm like, I want to do this forever. This is kind of boring. I need to figure something else out, but I didn't know what else to do. I was like, I don't have the time, I don't have the space or the money for yarn dyeing, and I don't have the creativity for designing. So basically my plan was, okay, I will just finish out this year. So we were still living in Wyoming. I was waiting for my spouse to finish his master's degree. So we were there for a year. Um, and then we knew we would be moving. There were a lot of job opportunities for either of us there. And so I was like, okay, well, it's December now. I started looking into like different options for working around there, but nothing exciting was opening up. And so I decided, okay, I'll just keep doing this until we move, and I'll probably get a job in architecture, interior design. My education's in architectural engineering, and I was working in interior design before I started Snickerdoodle Nuts. So anyway, that was my plan. And then, so that was like I said, like November, December, and then in February, so 3 months or so, I suddenly had a whole bunch of design ideas. But in that interim, I was like, it wasn't super clear where I was headed, what I was doing. It's kind of like in Jolie Kelly's book, Is It Enough Yet? She talks about going through the goo. There's a lot of things or stuck in the goo. There's a lot of times where we feel like we're stuck on the goo, whether it's because we feel like we're failing or because we feel like we don't understand, we don't have clarity. But from my experience, after we're stuck in the goo, then right after that is when there's a lot of clarity. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of enthusiasm. So basically I was stuck in the goo, and then I suddenly discovered that I maybe did have some creativity in me. At least I had some ideas. Suddenly had a whole bunch of design ideas. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna try designing. And then I never quit trying designing. So I'm still here. But so that was another learning experience there. And so it was very similar here with the Snickerdoodle Knits community. It's like, okay, I figured out I don't want to teach knitting to people. I don't enjoy this. This is draining me. So what do I want to do instead? And the only idea I had, which I, kept pushing back, so I didn't even realize I was having that idea, was to help other designers. I had this vision for quite a while that I would love to create a community for designers and to coach them and to help them have successful businesses, but I felt like I wasn't quote unquote successful enough yet. I wasn't an Andrea Mowry and I wasn't Hohi Locatelli, and therefore I felt like I couldn't teach people. And so I was like, okay, that will be something, 10 years from now when everybody in the knitting industry knows my name, that then I can create that for designers then. Spoiler alert. Did you know that it is now, that was at the beginning of 2021. It is now September 2022. I have a design membership community for designers. I had coach designers. I have a podcast now talking about business for designers. So sometimes we're ready before we think we're ready. And basically, yeah, I started to I was on a mindset call with somebody, a coaching call, and they're like, why can't you start that now? What? And I'm like, because I'm not an expert enough. I'm not successful enough. But that little question planted a seed, and I started to find the evidence around me that actually maybe I could do that. And so that was a huge learning experience. This realizing, okay, being completely focused on knitting is not my business. I mean, in more ways though too. One, it's not my business. That's not what I want to do for my business. And it's not my business doing that because I don't love it. So anyway, I started to really realize that what I loved, what I had already been doing unintentionally, was talking with other designers about running their business and, giving insight and help where I could, and just really discussing things and learning and growing together and all of that kind of thing. So I realized, oh, maybe I could create a community. I still didn't feel super confident about establishing myself as an authority. So it's like, okay, this is going to be a community where we can talk about everything, where we can answer each other's questions, where we can support each other. I'm going to bring in experts to teach you. And that was reasonable. That felt reasonable. It allowed me to move forward. And, of course, a year later, the design circle is now a year old. A year later, I have a lot more confidence. I have, I'm able to offer confidently more of my services. And so I guess that just comes back again to the fact that we have to learn through doing. We only gain confidence by practicing, by going through it and doing it. And realizing, oh, hey, I'm actually not super terrible at this. I'm actually better than I thought. I'm actually not bad. Actually, maybe I'm pretty good at this. And so that's a whole nother learning experience too. So all right, then my most recent, which I already kind of touched on, these are kind of like basically my pivotal, it's not failing, it's learning experiences. That's what I'm trying to get out here. The most recent one was, just this past summer, where I've been feeling so drained, so exhausted. I lost a lot of my enthusiasm for my business in general, which is like my passion baby. It's what I create. I get so excited about. I love to share. I love to create. I love just working in my business. And then when I was just drained and overwhelmed, I didn't feel like doing anything. And spoiler alert, wasn't a failure. It actually really helped me focus on some things that I've been wanting to focus on for a long time, but I didn't make time for because I was so excited about my business. Earlier this year, I realized, oh wait, for me to stop spending 24/7 on my business, I need to find things that I enjoy as much or more than my business. And that might sound weird. I am weird. Okay. But uh, that mentality of like, this is the one thing that I'm super excited about. This is like the thing I am passionate about. Um, that mentality kept me from doing other things, other interests, my hobbies, and spending time with friends and spending time with family, and all these different kinds of things, because it was like I was just too excited about my business, maybe, or I wasn't excited enough about the other things that I was interested in. And so being drained and exhausted and not loving my business gave me a whole lot of space to spend time on those other things that I have been wanting to spend time on for a while. Um, you know, Rekindling some friendships and talking to people again, and just um trying to strengthen my relationship with my spouse, and all those different kinds of things where, okay, maybe it wasn't so much, I mean, I'm sure actually it was a learning experience for my business, but the most growth was the parts outside of my business that support me as a person. Like they help me grow, they help me feel fulfilled, they help me to refuel. It allowed me to focus on those things. And the lessons out of it were really, your body, your mind, your brain, it can't go full force 24/7 on one topic, on one business. Um, you really need rest. You really need creativity and art. That's something I felt a huge, huge push towards, was to really, really be creative again, more creative, explore other forms of creativity. I started writing poems. I started exploring like tarot, and I got a weaving kit. I pulled out my painting stuff again. All these different things that I just thought I didn't have time for before. And so it really, really gave me space and interest to do those things again. It also really forced me to stop and think about what I'm doing, what it is that I enjoy, what it is that's draining, and how I want to move forward. And I think that's one of the biggest things that our quote unquote failures teach us or force us to do, that actually helps us grow and learn, is it makes us stop and think. Because when things are going well, it's easy to just keep pushing forward. It's easy to just keep going for the next goal, to just keep going at your pace. And the hard spots are when we actually stop and think, does this align with me? Do I enjoy this? Am I spending the amount of time I want to on this? What is my whole life picture? Is it enjoyable? All of these different kinds of questions. And so, yes, sometimes we have to learn that the hard way. Maybe we have to learn it over and over and over again. um, but that experience of realizing, like, why is this important? Why is this an important question to be asking myself? Why is this important to keep checking in with myself? Sometimes we need a big event that kind of just stops us in our tracks and makes us realize. And if can't beat yourself up over it. It's a learning experience. It's not a failure. It's not failing. It's learning. So yeah, I guess I have some other notes here. Like I had made a note of just like looking back over the past 4 years. It's really easy to focus on the quote unquote failures. It's easy to say, well, I should be here. I should have done this. I should have. Why did it take me so long? Why, all of these different kinds of questions and things. But instead, we could also focus on the positive. Over the past 4 years, I have designed 40 some patterns. I have learned so much about knitting. I have learned so much about myself. I've learned a lot about business. I've started Patreon. I started a knitting membership. I started coaching. I started a design circle membership. I started a podcast. I started one-on-one coaching. I started in tandem a knitting and crochet magazine publication thing. I've had several collaborations. I've met so many amazing people, had so many amazing conversations. And just that, like, I haven't even, that was a list I just came up with, like, off the top of my head. When usually what my brain likes to feed me is, you're not good enough. You should be further along. Why aren't you farther along? Um, and so part of this learning and growing from our quote unquote hard experiences, quote unquote failures, whatever you want to call them, is really celebrating what you have accomplished. Maybe your goal was to sell 60 patterns and you quote unquote only sold 50 patterns. You are almost there. That is not a failure. That is, instead, you can celebrate, oh my goodness, I sold 50 patterns. Like, yesterday I didn't think that was possible, and now I did it. Or, whatever it is for you, whatever your different goals are, celebrate what you have accomplished, celebrate what you have learned. And that's where I do believe that those check-ins are so helpful. The check-ins that I said that I always avoid, the ones that are recurring on my calendar that by the end of the month I realize, oh, I never did last month either. And the kinds of questions to ask there are things like, how did this month make me feel? Or how did this quarter, this year, whatever, or maybe you're looking back at a specific pattern release. How did it make me feel? How did the design experience feel? How did the launching experience feel? How did the test knitting experience feel? Did it feel good? Is this how I want to feel? What did I learn? What mistakes did I make? What do I want to change for next time? What do I want to change moving forward? And that's really, I think, the biggest part of how we can turn things from the perspective of being failing to the perspective of learning, is to ask these things and really be critical. Critical in assessing, but not critical to ourselves. Like look at it from a factual perspective, rather than saying, this makes me good or bad, this makes me a failure or a success. Just look at the facts of it. Look at the numbers. Look at, what is it factually, and align that with what you want factually, and then that tells you what you need to change, what you want to change moving forward, and all of that. Another little story, I guess. I was this summer when I was kind of really starting to feel so drained and frustrated, and like I was getting nowhere. Like I've accomplished nothing. 4 years of my life gone and I've done nothing. Obviously, that's not true, right? Obviously, I've been working 24/7 for the last 4 years and I've accomplished stuff. But I just received some different messages and emails from people that just felt random. But people that were saying like, oh my goodness, I'm so proud of you. You've been accomplishing so much. And I can't believe how much you've done. And you've been doing so many amazing things. I'm so excited for you. And just all these different things from random people. These weren't like my good friends. They're sweet. Some of them are really sweet supporters. Some of them I hardly even know. But it wasn't like I'd been telling them, hey, I'm miserable. Can you make me feel better? These were people who genuinely were excited about everything I've been doing. They were proud of what I've been doing. They couldn't believe what I've been doing. And here I sit and feel like I haven't done enough. And everybody else is like, how'd you do all of that? And I'm not saying that to say I'm something amazing. I'm saying that to say our human nature, you're probably a lot like me, especially if you're still listening to this episode. You probably resonate somehow. And so our human nature, it tends to focus in on these things that are negative when other people see our our lives, they see so much more positive. And when we allow ourselves to step back, we can see so much more positive. Like that list that I said of things that I've accomplished over the last 4 years, um, I was just a list that I just started rambling. And it's like, oh, wait, I have done a lot. um, and so, you know, don't don't hesitate to look at your accomplishments and celebrate those things. Um, and don't hesitate to learn from things that maybe didn't go exactly how you wanted to. Sometimes those things, like let's go back to my whole Snickerdoodle Knits community thing. If that would have been successful, if I would have just made, $100,000 off of this whole membership knitting community thing, um, it would have been a lot easier for me to stay stuck there and to feel like I kept having to do it because it was successful. Or when it felt like a failure, when I didn't feel really good about what I was doing, and I didn't have an exorbitant number of people in there, that allowed me to learn my lesson softly, or at least more softly than otherwise, how it could have been. And so really the quote unquote failures allow us to change our mind, allow us to learn, allow us to grow more gracefully, maybe more smoothly, without a whole big audience while we're trying to find our footing, or when we're trying to find our footing. I guess for the rest of my list here, I had just made a note of different things that we learn about ourselves and about our business when we quote unquote fail, but it's not a failure, it's a learning. And so things that we learn are things like what we can do. Like maybe we learned, oh, I can write patterns. I can design knitting designs. I can create really beautiful things. I can write patterns that people really love to follow and people say nice things about. You can learn what your strengths are. You can learn, I'm really good at breaking things down for people so that they can follow these instructions step by step. I'm really good at creating these intricate brioche designs that people just love and become these iconic pieces that the knitting community loves. I'm really good at I don't know. Anyway, those are different examples. You can so learning what your strengths are can really help you know what to do more of. You can really focus on how can I utilize those strengths more? How can I share more of that kind of stuff with the world? It also shows you what your weaknesses are. And that can be places where it's like, all right, I want to learn and improve here. Or it could be places where I want to hire this out because this isn't my strength. We learn a lot about what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy. We learn about the things that light us up. I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but in that whole, phase of multiple times I've gone through the phase of feeling drained and exhausted. What I really learned most is what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. And because I'm building a business that I really want to love, I'm trying to build a business. I am building a business. I have a business that lights me up, that I'm excited to work in every day. That's my main goal. I want to enjoy this more than I would enjoy working for somebody else. And so those lessons of what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy are really, 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 really valuable and important for my business. Something else might be extremely important for your business. But these things that we learn help us so, 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 so much. We also learn what motivates us. If you don't reach a goal, you look back and you're like, why? What happened here? You realize, oh, it's because this thing didn't motivate me because I wasn't excited about it. If I would have looked at it from this perspective, I maybe would have accomplished that thing. You learn what works for you as far as routines, as far as goal setting, as far as planning, as far as all of those different kinds of things, all of the different strategies, all of the different things you can learn from other people. it has to go through this filter of, does it actually work for me? Does it actually feel in alignment for me? Does it actually, make me feel happy? Or does it make me feel terrible? And those things usually we have to learn through trial and error. And then things like how much time you have. Obviously, we can do things like tracking our time and stuff. But when you set a goal and you don't know exactly how much time you have, and you have a goal with a date, sometimes you learn that you didn't have as much time as you thought you had. Or you learn how long the task takes. And so maybe you learn a goal was unrealistic because you didn't have enough time, or the task took too long. And those are things that we learn through experience. You also learn a lot about what your goals are and what your goals aren't, because if you're really working towards goals that aren't in alignment with you, you will get burnt out more easily. You will have a harder time pushing yourself to meet those goals and things like that. And then, of course, as far as business things, we learn a lot about different marketing strategies, what works, what doesn't work, what we like, what we don't like, what works with our audience, what doesn't work with our audience, if our marketing is actually attracting the correct ideal customer or not. You'll learn a lot about the wording we use in Instagram captions and email newsletters, in sales copy pages. We learn a lot about graphics. What kind of images do you want to share? What kind of images don't you want to share? What kind of images you look, different kind of responses. And then, of course, as designers, we learn a lot about designing. We learn about the numbers. We learn about pattern writing. We learn about all of these different things that we learn about. So often, it is because we quote unquote failed. But did you actually fail, or did you learn? That's my question for you. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling frustrated, if you feel like a failure right now, is it really feeling, or is it learning? And what have you learned, and what can you use to move forward? So I would love to hear how you choose to reframe a failing, whether that's something you're going through right now or something from the past, and realize if you break it down, you learn different lessons, and those are super valuable lessons that you can apply in the future. So thank you again so much for hanging out with me it's been over an hour. Of course, as always, I love chatting about all of these different kinds of things. If you need some one-on-one support for working through different things like this, working through to try to find the clarity, working through to figure out, okay, what was the lesson in this? I do offer one-on-one coaching. I'll have that linked in the show notes for the episode. It's also at snickerdoodlenets.com/design-coaching. And of course, there's also the Design Circle membership, so coaching is really, if you have something specific that you really need to work on one-on-one to work through, I offer them hour-plus increments. And the membership community is when you really need bigger picture, learn a lot of different kinds of things. You want community support from a lot of different people, that kind of thing. So always excited and happy to help you any way I can. And whether that's here on the podcast, I'm so excited that you're here, that you made it all the way through the episode, or through one-on-one coaching, the Design Circle, any of those kinds of places as well. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Pattern Design Circle if you found this episode helpful. I will talk to you again on the next episode. Wow, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.